And we are now recording.
All righty. I will open the regular meeting of the Springfield Economic Development Agency with roll call, please.
Board Member Van Gordon.
Here.
Board Member Pitts.
Here.
Board Member Moe.
Here.
Board Member Rodley.
Here.
Board Member Stair.
Here.
Chair Woodrow.
Here.
Board Member Pictionary.
Here.
And Board Member Burney.
Here, and I wish I could see Councilor Pitts so I could congratulate him. I'm here. I hear you, sir.
Okay, I'm going to start out by reading this. As we begin our meeting tonight, I would like to ask members of the audience who are joining us by phone or online to please keep yourselves on mute until you are called to provide public testimony. There is one time designated for public testimony this evening and will be listed as business from the audience. If you are joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak during that time, please use the raise hand feature. When you are called upon, please state your name, general location, and the subject you would like to speak about. The order of public testimony is as follows. 1, anyone who has raised their virtual hand. 2, anyone who has submitted email in advance. If there is remaining time, you will read the emails into the record. First item, please.
Chair, your first item is business from the audience.
Do we have anyone who signed up to speak?
Doesn't appear we have any hands at this time. We did receive one email, which I believe was forwarded to everyone. I'm happy to read it into the record, but you should have it. And I'm looking for hands raised, and I don't see any at this point.
Okay, we received that one. That becomes part of the record, even if you don't read it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Next item.
Can I step in for a second?
Sure.
I don't know how much Councilor Pitts knows about SEDA and what we're doing. Could maybe you give him, ask him first and then give him an outline if he doesn't know what we're doing. This is a whole new thing, and I'm not sure he was aware of that yet.
I'll check, and I think Courtney got a hold of him, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
She did. We had a good conversation on Friday, and I've been able to look at the packet. So
Okay.
I'm informed. I'll say well informed for
Great.
a few weeks later.
I
knew she was planning. I knew she was planning on reaching out, and I'm glad you guys had an opportunity to get together. Great. Next item.
Chair, the next item is new business. Item number 1, Budget Committee appointment. And Neil Obringer is here for the staff report.
Good evening, board members. The item before you is the reappointment of Tina Patel to serve a second term on the SEDA Budget Committee as the Glenwood District Representative. So before the board takes any questions, before the board takes action, I'm happy to take any questions.
Is there anyone with any questions, any comments?
Neil, are there any other applicants for the position?
No, Tina was the only applicant for this position.
That makes the menu pretty short.
Yeah, and she is a reappointment. Is that correct, Neil?
That is correct.
Okay. Not hearing or seeing anything further, I think we can entertain a motion. Is that correct, Neil?
That is correct.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Kamal Patel as the SEDA Glenwood representative of the SEDA Budget Committee.
Second.
Okay, was that Joe that made the motion and Steve that seconded?
Yeah.
So we can call for roll call vote, please?
Well, Madam Chair, could I ask a question to the motion?
Sure.
I'm just curious what the recruitment or information to the community was if there was only one person that applied from that area, just out of curiosity, if I might. Not that we have other options now.
No. Neil can probably respond to that.
Yeah, the standard recruitment for budget committee vacancies includes a press release, reaching out to existing budget committee members and counselors, letting them know of the vacancy and getting the word out best they can.
Neil, just so I understand, could you clarify getting the word out best you can?
I guess that's informal, an informal way of saying, reaching out to folks that the council and budget committee members may know who may be interested in the position.
Thank you, Chair.
We have historically not had a huge response to that position, Joe. It usually involves one budget meeting and it's SEDA only. So it's not,
Oh.
even though we get the communication out, it doesn't exude high interest.
I'm good. I was just curious. Thank you very much.
Uh-huh. I think we're ready for a roll call vote.
Board members Van Gordon,
Yes.
Pitts,
Yes.
Mo,
Yes.
Rodley,
Yes.
Stair,
Yes.
Woodrow,
Yes,
Pictionary,
Yes,
and Bernie.
Yes.
that's 7 in favor, none opposed. Next item.
Barry, your next item is the Downtown Development Project Participation Discussion. Courtney Griesel is here for the staff report.
Good evening, board and new board members. Pleasure to see you. So this evening, staff is providing to you all an updated and recommended path for participation in the redevelopment of the downtown Springfield motor site. So just for reference, we've referred to the site historically as the motor site, the Buick site, the Shearer site. Moving forward, we are going to start referring to it as the Blue Mackenzie site, as the current owners have now formed an LLC under Blue Mackenzie. I am noticing that board member Pictionary has his hand up.
I just pulled up everybody's. Joe, did you have something?
yeah, sorry, just for a point of clarification on the last item, you ended it with saying 7 in favor, none opposed, and I thought we had 8.
We have 6.
There's Joe.
6 plus 1.
6. I got
7 plus 1.
Sean.
7
Yeah.
plus 1 because we added Damien.
So I want to make sure if the record reflects 8-0 instead of 7.
You're correct. 8-0. Sorry, Damien. I didn't count you in yet. Yes, you're right. 8-0. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, good catch. Thank you.
Yes.
So jumping back into the Blue Mackenzie site, the site is in downtown. It's located on North A. It has been historically the Springfield Buick dealership for over 50 years under the Shearer family ownership. Where we're starting this evening is with the ask, and then we're going to walk through exactly what we've narrowed the negotiations down to. We're asking the board to authorize staff to draft and execute a memorandum of understanding between SEDA and Blue Mackenzie LLC, which will outline a financial partnership in the new construction of mixed-use residential and commercial project on the site. The structure in front of the board for authorization includes, and it's in the packet, but it is a SEDA loan of up to 10 million at an estimated 3.2% interest. The SEDA loan would be repaid in year 10 or thereafter in a term of maybe 5 to 7 years. And in third position to the senior bank debt and the original Blue Mackenzie LLC equity contributions. Nathan Bell, our finance director, is going to talk in more detail about that. But I want to first kind of, just for the benefit, we do have board members who have not been with us in 2020 as we worked through this, just sort of talk about the grounding of the purpose of the project. You know, we were engaged almost a year to date. We were all physically sitting together in a space when the Shearer family approached SEDA requesting partnership on doing feasibility work. The family was retiring from the Buick business. And it was important to them that the site renew in a way, to be the next great thing in its next life, equal to the way they had cared for it, but that, mixed use new construction development is not a typical business model or one that they were accustomed to. So our partnership was important. Now, a year later, this evening's proposal is based on the year of work, which has the market analysis, code analysis. We did quite a bit of massing refinement, all underlying the pro formas and the proposed budgets, and ultimately the negotiations. For the board, I did include attachment 2, which were the last 2 board packets, because that had a lot of that detail in there. I'm not going to dive into it, but I wanted to make sure you had it. And if any questions come up, we can visit it. I did note Nathan Bell is going to speak a little bit later. The team on this has been cross-departmental for sure. Nathan Bell has been at the table, Christina Kraz out of our city attorney's office. And then we have also brought in outside legal, financial, and development consultants, just based on the scale and complexity of the project. So they've really been watching for SEDA's interests and making sure that our progress and negotiations are informed. And based on the broader experience. So 2 of those advisors are here this evening. Nick Papanek with Tiberius Solutions will speak as we move in a little bit further as well. So the project is an 8-story project. It does not knock down the existing Buick building. We had discussed at one point our participation, including a purchase of the sites, and based on further negotiations, we're not recommending that this evening. It's not actually needed, and that was really something we were looking at if needed by the property owners. The pro forma reflects 85 residential units, varying sizes, their market rate, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, although some of those pieces may be flexible as they work to make the pro forma pencil as the construction and development refines. It does have ground floor commercial space. It proposes the use of mass timber construction materials. We call it type 4. This is not a construction type we have seen in Springfield, so it would be new construction type and new height. Would be one of the taller buildings, maybe outside of the hospital. It would also be the first new taxable construction project in downtown since the Urban Renewal District's formation in 2008. So that's a pretty substantial milestone for the district. The project's targeting a completion date of 2023 with an emphasis to meet current tax and opportunity zone timelines and also stay current to the feasibility work and the current lending rates. But the project's also aiming for a construction window that would use the dry season of 2022, since it's got the mass timber panels. It is a market rate, as we noted. I do want to note that SEDA has participated in 2 past new construction projects that were subsidized affordable housing units. They are not taxable, but they have been critical to the downtown housing inventory. This would be the first market rate participation. And we see it as very important for the supply and demand balance, especially as labor costs continue to go up. We're also seeing these building types occur in Eugene, but not necessarily here. And we're not seeing comps in our market, which means when a bank is approached for lending, they're not seeing proof of similar building types or rents in Springfield that they can command, and it makes that borrowing harder and more expensive. I am going to ask Nathan to come up and talk through the actual financial strategy that we're proposing. You'll remember in October, the project originally came to us showing a market gap between 5 and 6 million. Based on the board's feedback during that meeting and in the months following, we shifted our negotiations away from a subsidy and towards a subsidy that's more typical of a public agency partnership and towards a financial partnership that reflected an expectation of return, so that $1 of SEDA provided would come back with direct return. I have created a really simple PowerPoint that just reflects the images in your packet, so that we can, you don't have to flip back and forth between slides. But if I make you car sick in the process, please do tell me. Just gonna share this real quick. Nathan, can you talk a bit to the structure that we're talking about? I will increase this in size.
Yes. Good evening, board. And on the column on the left, there's two columns here. The column on the left is the structure that was originally proposed to us by the Shear family. And this included a request for a subsidy of $5.2 million. What this also doesn't show is that they also were going to take advantage of a vertical housing exemption. That would be worth about $2 million as well. So the total subsidy was around $7 million, and that was excluding the SDC program, which already is in place and exists within the Urban Renewal District. In looking at this, our response was it seemed like a large subsidy, and the return on the investment seemed pretty significant. And we had some concern in using taxpayer dollars to generate a return as such. We approached you, this was a project though that we were excited about, and we approached you on the possibility of participating in a different form where we would see a return on our investment. We got to go ahead to proceed with those conversations, and we went back to the group, which was essentially at this time the Shear family and the developer. Since then, they have formed an LLC, which is Blue McKinsey, as Courtney mentioned. So I'm going to refer to them as Blue McKinsey going forward. And one of the things we quickly learned is, as a government entity in the state of Oregon, we were pretty limited in how we could participate, and quickly came to the conclusion that some form of loan structure would be the best way for us to participate. We are capable of doing a $10 million borrowing in our district right now based on the current increment that we have. And so we use that as our starting point. And in looking at a return on that, the estimate that we got on that initial borrowing that we can do with the downtown district would have us paying an interest rate of around 2.2%. So we put forward whatever that interest rate will be plus 1%. So we're looking at an estimated 3.2% right now. Another high priority of ours was to remove the vertical housing, use of the vertical housing exemption. One of the purposes of urban renewal districts is to generate increment. And while it would have generated increment in the long term after 10 years, that just felt too long for us to wait for the purposes of that district and what we're needing right now. So by removing the vertical housing exemption and changing our participation from a cash grant to a loan that has stated interest rate, we significantly ate into the upside of this project for the investors. And so this got us into a point of negotiations, looking for a structure that was a win-win for all those involved. And one more thing I'd like to point out is for the purposes of that bank borrowing for the senior debt, the bank will look for equity. This loan would be a 10-year loan that would have no payments on principal or interest for the first 10 years. The senior debt borrowing would also be 10 years. As long as there were no payments of principal and interest during the life of the senior debt investment, the bank would treat that as equity, and that allows them still to do a bank borrowing. So the stack, as we're currently zeroing in on, and what we're putting in front of you for guidance this evening, is it would put the senior debt or the bank borrowing in first place, which is a requirement of that bank borrowing. What we negotiated with Blue McKinsey is that their investment would be in second place in terms of the dollar amount that they've invested, and then what we deem to be a conservative and reasonable rate of return, since we had eliminated a lot of the upside that would typically go along with the risk of an investment like this. At the same time, recognizing that we've underwritten a lot of the risk on this project. And so we we're arriving at around 4%. That's still to be finalized, but that's where we're sort of heading. And then it puts us in the third place for our borrowing of 10 million and an interest rate of 3.2%. And then at the point of takeout, if there's anything above and beyond that, it would go to the LLC. I think I've covered really the basics on this. Are there any questions, or I should also look to Courtney if I missed anything?
I think that's good. And we have Nick Papanuk here this evening, as well as Abe Farkas, to talk through.
Thank you.
Oh, I see Leonard. I see a hand up as well.
And Steve had one up too.
Perfect. Thank you.
So thanks. Courtney, this 5.2 million that would have been available in public subsidy, would that have been a contingent on our developing affordable housing in this site?
It would not have been the 5.2 gap that was identified as a gap in this model, which is a market rate model. Urban renewal does participate in market rate taxable projects. It's sort of its existence to participate in those types of projects.
But conventionally, the subsidy is sort of contingent on participation on some sort of definition of affordable. Is that right?
I might actually defer to some of our consultants because I don't know that that's accurate, but I might look to Nick or Abe, who have had some experience in other municipalities as well.
This is Abe. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So, yes, you certainly can use urban renewal dollars for affordable housing. You can also use it for private sector mixed income projects. That's been done very substantially around the state of Oregon. Canby just did a downtown project, its first one ever, mixed use. It is a market rate product. Hillsborough did something very similar, the 4th and Main project a number of years ago. It was the first mixed use project in their downtown history, I think 156 units with ground floor retail. As long as the application of the urban renewal dollars are in your urban renewal plan, you can use them for that.
Okay. So I guess my next question would be, if it could have been used for market rate housing, then why did we decide to offer SEDA money again? I mean, is that in order to increase our investment and our return on investment? Was that the only reason?
So we haven't offered any SEDA money yet. What has occurred is that the property owner and developer have requested SEDA assistance on developing a market rate project. You know, they own this site and they're in the partnership with the developer. Currently, our market does not have any comps in the market that would substantiate a market rate development. And that is one of the first hurdles for starting to tip that supply and demand issue, where we don't have the supply of any of the housing. So it was really Blue Mackenzie's lack of interest in affordable housing that drove this decision. I don't know that it's a lack of interest, but that currently projects don't pencil even at market rate. So adding affordable makes the gap even broader. And it's not that they may not pencil, it's that we don't have anything to prove that they will pencil. And so a bank or an investor sees substantial amounts of risk. Adding affordable housing units increases the risk because it widens the gap between revenue and their ability to pay debt to construct the project.
Okay.
And then I know, just keeping track, Nick, did you have anything? I want to make sure I'm hitting that correctly because you have more experience in more districts than we do.
You know, I think you said it correctly. The typical reason why we would see urban renewal agencies invest in a market rate project is because that market rate product does not exist in that area. And it's a product that should exist in the area, and the area is blighted and being held back by a lack of new construction. And it can be a self-perpetuating cycle where if only there was a successful product, then everyone else could look at it and go to the bank and copy it and begin making more of that. But until somebody comes in and does it the first time, no banks are willing to lend to them. And so it's a chicken and an egg sort of a situation. Whereas when you look at affordable housing, it's completely different. Nobody's looking at it with an expectation of getting a return. Everybody knows that it's going to need to be subsidized. It's just a question of how much subsidy to give it. So very different reasons for investing in those different product types. Both are common types of products for urban renewal agencies to invest in. On this particular site, Blue Mackenzie did come in thinking about a market rate product. And there's a need for both, I think, in downtown Springfield, a need for affordable product, but also a need for market rate, just to set that market and show other developers that it can succeed here to get that type of development moving in the future.
I'll probably have more to say later, but that's fine for now. Thank you.
Steve and then Sean.
I do not have good questions like Councilor Stair had, but I did want to ask this. Apparently we're alluding to a vertical housing restriction that we're going to exempt. I do not know what vertical housing is.
That's fair. Yeah, so vertical housing was a program that was in place in partnership with the state some years ago. The state has since stepped away from that program, but the authority given to communities to use it still exists. Springfield has not actually used our vertical housing program under this new sort of sole use before in downtown. So the program exists, but it would require us to do some work with the city council to bring it back to life and have policies in place to administer it. What we really have stressed is that a tax abatement in a tax increment district runs counter. So a district that thrives on taxes being created, if we're always abating the taxable value, we're sort of tipping the economic tool. And so it became important to us that we say, look, we don't want to abate these taxes. We need to get that income coming back in so the district can start doing other projects.
Okay. You really haven't explained to me what vertical housing restriction is.
So a vertical housing restriction from our standpoint is that we are restricting the use of the tool by providing this loan. A vertical housing program is not a restriction. It's just a program that allows a project to abate the taxes over a period of, I think, 10 years. So a project can come in, it's similar to what we hear about in Eugene called MUPD. A project can come in and can qualify for an abatement of a certain percentage of their taxes over a lengthy amount of time, if it's primarily residential.
I still don't understand it, but I won't ask anymore.
Well, it's a good question. We can get more information from Sandy.
But vertical housing restriction sounds to me like there's a limit to the number of floors that you can build something. That's what.
Well, okay, so there are height restrictions in downtown. This building is going up to the current code height restriction. So there is that.
It also sounds like there's maybe a misnomer here. Where's the word restriction coming from? It's a vertical housing exemption.
I used restriction for definition.
Okay.
Yeah, guess what we said? Vertical housing exemption. So that would imply to me there was a restriction before. And that's why I use the word restriction.
It's an exemption to paying taxes.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you. Okay.
Sean.
So could we go back to the sort of market rate question for a minute? So like if we play this out and it's sort of 2023 and like everything we planned out is correct and there's a beautiful new building there that's full of tenants, when the next developer that comes down the road that's looking for a bank loan, they're going to be pointing to that building as a way to understand their pro forma and the economics of building in downtown. And okay, and currently we have no example of sort of this sort of new private development downtown. So we're both getting it in this theory of the world, we're getting a brand new building, which is for housing, and we're sort of checking off a box to unlock the next sort of phase in development in downtown.
Yeah, and I would even broaden it to say Springfield as a whole. We actually, in a look at the market about a year and a half ago, we're looking for comps and we don't have a comp anywhere in Springfield for this product type.
Okay. And I think that's a critical thing to understand is like when we've talked about development, probably for the last 5 years, this type of new development is just missing out of the Springfield landscape, and just having it here and having it done is going to help us in the long term. I had another question about attachment 1, page 1 of 6. So we're giving this in theory out as a loan, right? So how, if in under the concept designs, right, the goal is for it to be a mass timber construction. So if we're not part of the LLC, how are we is that a decision that would be out of our hands, or would it get written in the memorandum of understanding? Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and we can also, this is where we have a great team with Abe and outside legal counsel. The development agreement is the tool for it. So what we end up doing in the development agreement is writing in legal requirements for performance, for expectations of design, for check-ins if things need to adjust, and when it comes back to the board for an approval if it's adjusting. Basically, when the rules change or when the goal starts to shift, the development agreement legally creates triggers for us to catch it early and to engage often, so that we're part of acknowledging why it's changing and being in agreement. But we didn't want to get into development agreement legal language before coming to the board with the general structure and shape.
Okay, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Joe, Thorny, did you have something?
I don't know. Let's see. First off, not at all being critical, but supportive and understanding what you're saying, Courtney, and others about creating a type that others can use. Am I hallucinating? Or the last time you spoke to us, were you not enthused about SEDA being a majority owner of this?
Yeah, we had a discussion about SEDA being an equity investor, and thinking from the lens of what would a majority owner expect. And what it really meant was we had to dig into the legality of it. And Nathan sort of referenced that in his speaking, where there is a substantial amount of gray area and also some constitutionality questions. And that was something that we recognized, and it determined very clearly that we, as much as it makes some sense, fundamentally, we constitutionally actually cannot be an owner.
Explain that. What is the gray area specifically, and where specifically in the Constitution does it say that a municipality cannot partner in a development? And I'm not being critical.
No, it's good because we had these same exact conversations with inside and outside legal counsel. And I saw Christina's screen pop on, which
Yes.
is always a sign.
I'm happy to answer that question. It's Oregon Constitution Article 11, Section 9. It says no city by vote of its citizens or otherwise shall become a stockholder in any joint company, corporation, or association, whatever, or raise money for or loan its credit to or in aid of such company, corporation, or association. So it's a little known, little used provision, I think, but it does very explicitly prohibit us from being a member in SEDA is an agency of the city. So it very clearly applies and prevents us from being a member or participating in a way that looks like membership in any corporation.
Hey, Christine, it's nice to see you and meet you. I got the one email. Offline, I'm going to tell you how our families are actually connected. So, okay, that explains that, because Courtney, as I recall, you were pretty enthused about the leverage and return that SEDA would get under that structure. So now, thank you, that answers that question. My next question, I wish we had a banker here. So SEDA is going to be in third position. What are the usual, right now, current market interest rates for a third position unsecured loan?
Nathan, do you want to take that, or?
Well, first off, a traditional, third place unsecured loan, what would a market rate look like? you would really need a banker to answer that.
I can tell you it's much higher than what I can tell you. I'm sorry I set you up a little. I kind of know it's much higher than what you're talking about.
Well, I don't think you did set us up, Board Member Bernie. I think we agree with you on this. But we also recognized for this to work out, this isn't our project. It was brought to us. This is a product that we want. And for this project to work out, we had to negotiate a rate that would work for them. Recognize that the agency and the city are going to receive more than just the return on that investment of the original loan amount and that interest rate. We also will receive increment beginning in roughly year 3 from that point forward to the tune of around $200,000 a year. We will have a product that currently doesn't exist that will provide a comp for further development. We have created density in our downtown that will continue to further the revitalization of our downtown. So there's a lot of factors that are going into this that would make us behave differently than a bank that is looking purely at a bottom line of profit.
Yes, and I'm not being critical. Whenever I challenge things, I just think it's healthy for us as a body. So my next point is kind of in simpatico with Leonard's point. If this, by the way, we don't have a clue what market rates are going to be. Right now, there's this 1976 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in Thurston, 1,500 square feet, $2,700 a month is the rent. And I only know this because my kid's looking for a place. So we don't know what market rate will be. But as it relates to low income housing, if SEDA has a plan that talks about how specifically it's going to support a certain number of percent of low income housing units, then, and maybe this isn't the project that would support that, but we need to have a plan. Do we have that kind of a plan or a commitment? So in fact, whether it's this or a portfolio of projects, we are committing a certain amount of low income units for the residential population of our community.
The voter approved urban renewal plan does not have number specific, especially since those plans exist for durations, horizons that are 20 and 30 years. Our affordable housing plan is really, in order to be streamlined and on the same page, it leans into the housing department, the housing program, and the council adopted housing plan. And so that's really the place that we partner. It is why SEDA has participated. Really, our only 2 new construction housing projects have been affordable subsidized units, and we are assisting as staff on the Mill Street project as well, which is an affordable project underway. And I started to talk and I noticed Nate's hand up. So Nate, do jump in.
Well, you've answered the question that needed to be answered, and that's great. I do, though, want to acknowledge, Board Member Bernie, that we share the same concerns when it comes to affordable housing in this region, but that there are multiple ways of addressing that. And one is a traditional model of subsidizing individual units. But I want to propose another approach to that as well. And I think what we have going on in this region is an issue with supply and demand. And if you were to drive through this region and look at the housing stock, you would find that a lot of the rents really aren't matching the quality of the housing that is available. What we need to do is flood this market with housing. And I think what you'll do is you'll move people around and we'll start to see the market sort of reacclimate itself to reasonable rates for the type of housing that you are securing.
Thank you, Chair. And that makes me even more look forward to next week and, the 400 or so units that's going to be discussed. So thank you very much.
Continue on, Courtney.
I think I see Leonard or Board Member Stair.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Leonard, I didn't see you.
No, that's all right. Thanks, Marilee. Courtney, I know that there's a site adjacent to Springfield Buick that's being contemplated for another possible housing project. Is there any affordable housing that's going into that building?
I don't know. You may know about a project that I don't know about.
Okay, well, it was in the blueprint. It was 80 units, I think.
Oh, so I think that as they were looking at massing, they're looking at multiple phases of how to use the site. And, you know, they were looking at both the parking lot to the north and the parking lot to the east. The decision to go with the site on the east was because that actually has the higher height allowance. So the building could go taller, which means they could add more units. You know, our ultimate hope is that a future phase, whether it be on the north parking lot or another location, as the market starts to balance, we may have more ability to engage with somebody about doing mixed income in the unit because there's just more capacity and confidence. So, you know, it might be in the future, but that really was a massing concept that was just put on paper to see what could be created. And there hasn't been initial work. It was just enough assessment to say that's farther in the future.
Yeah, I think Mayor Van Gordon raised an excellent point, which is that if I'm a future investor who is looking to develop my own housing project, then I would have a reasonable expectation that I would get the same deal as the team of Blue McKenzie is getting right now. And that's a concern to me because the Blue McKenzie people are getting the deal that they're getting from the city right now with no affordable housing. So it does raise a concern for me that after the next developer gets the same deal, then I think it'll be a reasonable expectation of all developers to get this deal in perpetuity. So it's I've got to say I see sort of a domino effect as possible.
Nate or
well, so
Nate or Abe or
yeah,
I think Abe's
Abe,
probably going to answer the question I was going to answer, so I'm going to let Abe do it. Of experience.
okay.
Right. In most communities, particularly smaller communities, the highest risk is usually with the first party in, which is why that first party, if there is an urban renewal agency, an urban renewal district, often seeks that entity out to assist in demonstrating, as has been mentioned already, that you can put together a viable project. So you've got the private developer taking an inordinate amount of risk, and again, without some kind of assistance in the form of loan. Some cities do grants, some do a combination. Here you basically got a loan, which is good. Just to make that, to demonstrate that there is viability. The second party that comes in can then realize that assuming this project works out well, we all think that it's on a track to do that. You're setting rents that enable the subsequent developers to go ahead and get private financing. And there's often not a need to bother with the renewal agency. And it's worked like that in a number of communities.
I see Mayor Van Gordon's hand up, but.
Mayor Van Gordon?
Yeah, so just to clarify, Leonard, I wasn't talking about the same deal from us. I was talking about the deal that the market was sort of driving, right? Because they could see and plan for a better plan for the rents, right? If somebody comes back through the door, I would imagine it would be a whole other conversation if they're looking for a partner. I don't know what it would look like or how we would engage with them, but the rents that they're getting at the market rate would inform the next builder's financials, and they'd have more certainty around it.
Joe Pictionary?
So please straighten me out if I got this all messed up, but just simple question. Do we have multiple affordable housing projects going on currently in Springfield? So
yes, we do. We have,
okay.
Yes.
Great. Now, is it possible that we can have multiple projects, but not all of them affordable housing projects, but all of them help the city in a global way, in a larger way that will increase our housing inventory, which is really the overriding elephant in the room, that we don't have enough housing, but it's not just housing at affordable price point. It is housing at all price points. Mm-hmm. So the more movement you have at different price points, at market rates and affordable housing, it's a mix. I cannot see how it was so paramount that every single thing must be affordable housing. It has, in my mind, it has to be a mix. I understand there's needs, but this is an investment, and this is something where we can be a catalyst to more projects instead of getting all stuck in the mud. And this is where we can get some energy from developers that can blossom into many different things, including more additional affordable housing. I don't understand the complexity of that. I mean, I don't know how it's not understood, but I think this is a great project. I think it's put together well. We've discussed this at length previously at the same subject. And I think that we need to hear about how we can get this thing rolling and move on, because it's just going to mean a better thing for Springfield and all of its residents, including increasing affordable housing, because it's going to be a catalyst project. So that's where I'm at.
Leonard, did you have?
You're muted.
You're muted.
Hey, as Phil or Joe, it looks to me like you're at the ocean.
I wish I was.
Oh, we all. So I guess my observation at this point would be that since I'm like Agent Bernie at this point, I feel that the project that we're contemplating now, especially if there are going to be additional units in addition to the 85, I think that it's going to be a project of a scope that's not as big as Marcola Meadows is going to be, but in a way as ambitious. And it might be a good idea to hold off on sending this forward until we can consider the Marcola Meadows project and whether there's going to be any affordable housing in that one. I'm not saying that we need to hold off on the vote. I'm just wondering if it might be a good idea to.
That's something I'll flag just for conversation. The current project on the table, we are kind of coming up to their decision timeline based on the tax cycle and the opportunity zone cycle, something that I know many board members have talked about related to Glenwood as well. And so we are we don't own this project, so we are somewhat trying to work within their timelines as owners of the site and also investors. And the project may not be there. I think this is an important evening for them as they're understanding to move forward or to look elsewhere so they can hit their investment timelines.
Marilyn.
Sean?
Yeah, I'm comfortable going forward here. Even if we had, every project that we have in the pipeline that involves housing to go forward and get built, we would still have a need for housing. And I would, not want to hold that up at all, right? People need doors so that they can live and be in the city. So like I said, I'm comfortable going forward here.
Corey?
I know that I probably won't always agree with Councilor Pishneri, so I want to jump in and I'm very committed to affordable housing and creative affordable housing and low income housing. And I also want housing of all types, because I know that's what's important right now is we don't have enough housing inventory. And I also want market rate, and I want people to pay taxes, and I want us to develop and grow and try out these new types of housing. So I also am very much in supportive of it. And I know that we are working on affordable housing in other ways and are going to continue to work on adjusting the code so that we can do more of the missing middle housing. So I know that we are committed to that, and we're going to keep holding ourselves. And I really appreciate Councilor Stair just making sure that we do hold ourselves accountable to that. And I am very much in support of doing this as well.
Thanks, Corey. Joe Bernie? Did you have your hand up?
Yes, ma'am. Everyone knows I hate agreeing with Councilor Pishinari.
What I want to know is how come everybody hates agreeing with me? Damien, you're new on the block. Help me out here, buddy.
I want want to be really, I want to be really clear. I support this project, period. I think that this body needs to know it's in the context of some other pretty significant and larger potential projects hitting us right away. I don't think this is going to be a market leader and market creator, given the other projects that are happening that don't need this to occur to still have money behind them. But I think this is a good deal. I think we ought to do it. Nick, I actually have a question for you. Courtney keeps referring to the opportunity zone timeframe, and this meeting is critical, and et cetera. Maybe I misunderstand, but my understanding of opportunity zone investments relates, I don't even know if there's opportunity zone funding in this damn thing. So why don't you tell us from the horse's mouth what your timeframe constraints are and why this is critical timing for you?
This is actually a question that is better put to Courtney and Nate. So,
I thought you were the expert. I'm sorry.
No. The opportunity. Well, so the opportunity zone in this context relates to the specific funds that the LLC partners have. So they're the ones that are operating under their timeline. It doesn't make any difference to the city's investment here. But before I kick it over to Courtney and Nate to answer that specific question, I will say that I have appreciated all of the board's comments tonight. And when I think about some of the common threads here, is the return on investment that SEDA might receive here too low? You know, for a loan in third position that's unsecured, shouldn't we be getting a higher rate of return? Is this developer getting maybe too good of a deal? In the future, should these sorts of projects require that a share of the units be affordable? I hope the answer to all of those things is yes. I hope that when this project is completed, it proves that there is demand for this type of product here, that the rental rates are strong, that this project sells for a significant profit, and that profit means the private developers make out significantly better than the 4% that is currently on the table is guaranteed, and that for all future projects that this board is considering, you now have this success to look back on and say, okay, the next time we do this, we're either going to have higher expectations of return, we're going to put in a lower amount of capital, we're going to require that the project have some affordable units, because you will have gone through this process and you will have had a proven success that you can point to, and you can use that to set your expectations accordingly. So I think just because this is the first project and it is the first of its type in this area, I think that's why you might be looking at these things and saying, you know, I think that we could have, bigger concessions out of the developer or higher rates of return. It's just tough when you're working with a private developer who doesn't have any comps and is trying to get a bank loan.
Hey, Nick, I would agree with everything you're saying, except I predict when we have those discussions, the world will look different and multiple variables that we can't predict now will be in play. But again, I'm for this damn thing. Thank you.
I wanted to say I am too. I'm looking forward to this. I heard what Nate said when you talked about, flooding the market. I think it's something we don't think about often enough. But if we want competitive prices and prices to go down, you have to have enough product out there in order for people to compete in price and get and sell their product. And rents are a product that are out there to be sold. And right now they're sky high. If we have more rental opportunities, they're going to compete with each other because they're going to have empty rooms and empty apartments. And so, excuse me, that's an advocacy that I come from. And when Nate spoke about it, I thought it was important to bring it back in. But affordable housing, we definitely have a need for it. We did the Royal, we did the work with the Brethren. We've got Mill Street going. It's not like we're ignoring it. We're trying very hard to try to hold up that into the market as well. So this project itself, I think is very exciting. And I think from the comments that I've heard from people that would be around it or near it as it's being built and when it gets finished, they're excited. They're looking forward to having something like that downtown. So I am definitely in support of it.
Something I'll note, just because board member Bernie brought Opportunity zone is something being discussed, opportunity funds, but actually more important to that is a capital gains reinvestment timeline. I think there's about 120 windows left, or 20 days left on that for the property owner. Every day is a window anymore. So
Tell me about it.
that's one of the pieces where we've kind of got to make that decision about our participation.
Mary Lee, are you ready for a motion?
I believe so. Courtney, did you have anything else that what kind of an ask do you want us to have in the motion?
So written in the memo is some language around whether to authorize or not authorize, basically the three kind of fundamental legs of the stool being the $10 million loan at that interest, the repayment in year 10 or thereafter, and in third position. I want the board to also kind of know our next step would then be to work quickly over the next month and a half to formalize those terms into an MOU, execute an MOU, but actually to come back to the board with a development agreement. So that would get to all the questions folks have asked about recourse, process, phasing, kind of quality assurance, for the board to review that legal document. And the development agreement is actually the legally binding phase. So you would likely also see loan documents, and that would really be the moment, the big jump.
So the MOU will lead us into that stage.
Correct.
Okay. Sean?
I move to authorize the staff to draft and execute a memorandum of understanding between the Springfield Economic Development Agency and Blue McKinsey LLC to include terms as outlined in this board packet.
Do I hear a second?
Got a second, but the outlines are the same as, just clarification, the same as on attachment 1, the bottom of attachment 1, page 5.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So that's, I clearly second that.
So Sean made a motion, Joe Pensionary seconded it. Do we have a roll call vote, please?
Is there any discussion to the motion?
You know the rules, Joe.
I have a question, and excuse me for being new, but is there any way for us to, I mean, I see there are 24 attendees. Is there any way for us to get some of their input before we move forward? Is that even a possibility?
Their order of business or audience participation, they begin in the beginning of the meeting when we asked for any information from the audience, or if anybody had anything that they needed to say. That was part of the agenda in the beginning of the meeting. And they also received the same packet that we received on Thursday and have an opportunity to email or call in any comments prior to the meeting tonight. Does that help answer the question?
It does, but you know, I mean, I received the information as well, but I think when I actually heard people discuss it, it made things a little bit more clear and led to more questions that I might have eventually. And so I'm guessing that some of the people might feel that way too, because you know, you can look at a huge document, but when people actually discuss it, it makes it a little bit more coherent. But I don't know. I think it's cool. I'm just, like I said, I'm learning, so I apologize.
There's no such thing as a stupid question. Ask any question you want to ask. That's just fine. What I would say is that if there is anybody out there that has any questions or concerns, they can always get in touch with us, get in touch with Courtney, get in touch with me, you know, any of us. This is something that came to us a year ago. So it's something that has been discussed along the way, and questions will crop up or people will want more information, and they're perfectly free to contact any one of us to get more information or to find out what the answers are. It doesn't always have to happen right here.
And if it helps, Damien, there's of those 40 some odd people, many of those are city staff and whatnot. There's probably about 8 or 10 citizens present, as opposed to what appears to be almost 40 some.
I heard a rumor that city staff are also citizens.
Oh, gee, thanks, Joe.
Don't get me started, Joe. Put that hand down.
Were there any other discussion before we go to the roll call vote? Joe?
Yeah, and again, I'm going to be voting aye on this, but given that we're talking about a third and it's unsecured, what is, you like to hope for the best and plan for the worst, and it usually ends up somewhere in between. What's the worst case scenario for SEDA as an organization? What is our exposure through this method of finance?
So we actually identified a realistic exposure, sort of what we're considering to be a conservative. Worst case is an asteroid hits the city, the thing burns down, everything floods. I mean, we could really go down that rabbit hole, but we asked Nick to walk us through a conservative, and that is included as attachment 4 in the packet. But I do have it available if and we have Nick here to talk through that if that's a conversation that that would be helpful, as that sort of initial look really kind of told us, let's assume the rents underperform, the vacancy stays high, it doesn't lease up, so it doesn't create that value. That exposure starts to look like about 1.4 million in that conservative look. And so what that means is we put in 10 and we only receive 8.6 back. And that's something that we really wanted to understand. So what does that mean? We have the building, we've created the product. It's the conservative exposure. Nick, do you want to?
Although I can say, Courtney, that's good enough for me. I'm the one that asked the question, unless other people need more. Except you said would we own the building as in third position?
So right now we're not slated to own. We're a debt.
No, you said in that scenario, yeah.
Courtney, do you mind if I pop in really quick? I think I can maybe help you understand this. You've mentioned unsecured a number of times. It's actually not unsecured.
Okay.
Assets of the LLC are going to be pledged as collateral against that. Recognize that a lot of this pro forma is based on a 10-year takeout point. If at that 10-year we didn't like how things were looking, the condition of the market, we could have the ability to actually take over the asset and pay off the first bank loan and pay off the second tier Blue McKinsey investment, and then hold on to that asset for a longer period of time to where the market turned around and we felt that we could better recoup our investment, or I should say our loaned money. So there's some flexibility in how we could approach this, and a lot of this will be detailed in the MOU that we're going to begin to draft.
Chair, thank you. Nathan, thank you. Courtney, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
I thought
Any
I was
further
going to get to
discussion?
share the slide.
Now I'll call for the roll call vote.
Board Member Van Gordon,
Yes.
Board Member Pitts,
Yes.
Board Member Moe,
Yes.
Board Member Rodley,
Yes.
Board Member Stair,
No.
Board Chair Woodrow,
Yes.
Board Member Pictionary,
Absolutely.
and Board Member Burney.
Almost absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
So we have 7 in favor, 1 opposed. Next item.
Chair Woodrow, you have no other items on your agenda.
Then we will adjourn then, I guess, if that's the end of it.
Yes.
Was there anything more, Courtney?
Nope. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great
We are
night.
adjourned.
Thanks.
Good night.